Hey there. So, picture this. Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana steps up to a big stage in front of the whole Congress. He's got a serious look, like he's ready to call out something big. He's there to talk about Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas, who's been saying some stuff about President Trump and how the government spends money. Let's dive into what happened, line by line, like we're gossiping with a friend. Kennedy stood tall at the podium, his eyes super focused, like a hawk watching something sneaky. He wasn't there to be all nice and friendly. He wanted to challenge Crockett, who had just called Trump a billionaire con man and said cutting government spending was just a show. With his slow, southern way of talking, Kennedy snapped back saying, "People in America are tired of wasting money, and you're standing up for it, Jasmine." Crockett, who used to be a lawyer, loves going on TV shows like Jimmy Kimmel's to talk about impeaching Trump over things like a $400 million airplane or some weird cryptocurrency stuff. But Kennedy wasn't buying it. He called her out for defending a messy system that wastes money, like spending $20 million on Sesame Street in Iraq. Everyone in the room got super quiet after he said that. Kennedy looked around like he was searching for Crockett in the crowd, even though she wasn't. There, he kept going, saying her big speeches against Trump were just hiding how the government wastes money. His voice was warm, but tough, like a teacher who's not mad, just disappointed. He said, "You can go on TV all you want, but people want the truth, not a show. We're spending money like it grows on trees." Crockett's known for being bold on TV, showing up on shows with Jim Acosta or Stephen Colbert, calling Trump a manipulator, and even daring him to take an IQ test on Kimmel's show. She's promised to lead a big investigation into Trump's plane and crypto deals if she gets a powerful job in Congress. But Kennedy laughed it off, saying, "Crockett thinks she's a star on TV, but no one in Louisiana or Texas is buying what she's selling." He pointed out that Crockett, who represents part of Texas, keeps defending huge government programs for things like schools, healthcare, or helping other countries. Kennedy wasn't having it. He asked like he was giving her a pop quiz. "You talk about justice, but is it fair that Texans pay taxes for stuff they don't even know about?" Then he brought up a weird example. Crockett once played a game in a meeting saying Trump blames transgender people for all kinds of problems. Kennedy smirked and said, "You like games, Miss Crockett? Here's one. Is spending $10 million on a group tied to bad guys in Yemen a waste? People know it's a waste, and they don't need a lawyer to tell them that." A few people in the room laughed, but Kennedy kept going. He talked about how Crockett defends spending money on things like diversity programs in other countries like Serbia or Macedonia. He also brought up a story where Crockett got in trouble for cutting in front of two disabled people at an Atlanta airport. Trump called her low IQ, and Kennedy joked, "I don't know if that's true, but maybe she should spend her time checking where our tax money goes." What really got Kennedy mad was Crockett saying Biden's plans were investing in the future. Kennedy shook his head and said, "Investing? That's what you call adding $36 trillion to our debt? People in Shreveport or Dallas call that stealing from their wallets." He said Crockett's support for big plans like the American Rescue Plan just makes life harder for people dealing with high prices and taxes. Kennedy ended with a big challenge, his voice loud and clear. "Crockett, if you want to investigate Trump, start by looking at yourself. You're defending a system people are sick of. Step away from the TV cameras and face the truth." Kennedy stood tall, like a captain on a ship, and started talking about specific ways the government wastes money. He flipped through a big list, like a detective finding clues. He said, "Let me tell you what your tax money is paying for. Stuff Crockett thinks is okay." First, he shocked everyone by saying $164 million went to groups in Gaza tied to Hamas, a dangerous group. He paused and said, "Imagine a family in Texas working hard, and their money goes to groups that want to hurt people. Crockett, is that justice? I call it an insult. Next, he talked about 2 million spent on gender surgeries in Guatemala. He raised his hand, confused, and said, "Why are people in Baton Rouge or Houston paying for that?" Crockett, got an answer, or are you too busy talking about Trump on TV? Then he laughed about $20 million for a Sesame Street show in Iraq. What's Big Bird doing in Baghdad, he asked. That money could fix schools in Louisiana or build homes in Dallas. Crockett, do you think Texans want their money on TV shows in Iraq? He kept going, pointing out $1.5 million to teach journalists in Sri Lanka not to use words like boy or girl. He raised an eyebrow and said, "I don't know what that means, but workers in Shreveport would rather fix roads or lower taxes. Crockett, is this smart spending?" More laughs came when he mentioned $10 million for a group in Yemen tied to Al-Qaeda. "We're sending money to people our soldiers fight against," he said. "Crockett, is this what you call justice?" He said these things betray the trust of Americans who want their money used wisely. He listed more: $1.5 million for LGBTQ programs in Jamaica, $3.9 million for diversity programs in Macedonia, and $8.3 million for teaching fairness in Thailand. "Ask a mom in Dallas working 2 jobs, he said. "Does she want her taxes paying for this? I bet she doesn't." The biggest shock was $4.7 trillion missing from government accounts. Kennedy stood still and said, "That's not pocket change. It's bigger than most countries' budgets. Crockett, why not investigate that instead of Trump's plane?" He said this missing money shows something super wrong, and Crockett's defending it. He also mentioned $60 million for condoms in Ghana. "I'm not against helping others," he said, "but why are we paying for that when we have homeless people in San Francisco? And $1.5 million for diversity programs in Serbia? Louisiana needs bridges, not diversity talks," he said. Finally, he laughed about $8 million to build media in Cuba. "We're paying for that while Texans keep streetlights on. Crockett, explain that to your voters." He said these things don't help Americans. They just add to our debt and make life harder. Kennedy ended with a warning, his voice strong. "Crockett, you can keep defending this on TV, but people are watching. They want their money used for their hard work, not crazy projects abroad." The room got heavy as Kennedy started talking about real people, not just numbers. He said Crockett's defending a system that hurts everyday folks. He told stories about people struggling because of wasted money. First, he talked about Maria, a mom in Dallas, Crockett's district, who works 2 jobs to raise her kids. Her taxes go to places like Yemen for bad groups. Kennedy looked at the room and said, "Crockett, have you met Maria? She doesn't want her money on clinics in India. She wants better schools or roads." Next was James, a welder in Shreveport, who served in the military. His taxes helped pay $20 million for Sesame Street in Iraq. Kennedy shook his head. "James fought for us, and now he's paying for Big Bird in Baghdad? Crockett, that's betrayal, not justice." Then there was Sarah, a retired teacher in Baton Rouge, struggling with high prices. Her taxes go to $1.5 million for diversity lessons in Serbia. Kennedy pointed and said, "Sarah needs health care, not lessons in Thailand, Crockett," he told. "But Miguel, a store owner in Houston, working hard to live the American dream. But $4.7 trillion in taxes is missing." Kennedy stepped forward. "Miguel doesn't want his money with Al-Qaeda groups. He wants to grow his business. Crockett, do you think about him?" Last was Emma, a veteran in New Orleans living in a tough neighborhood. Her taxes paid $60 million for condoms in Ghana, while her streets need lights. Kennedy leaned in. "Crockett, would you tell Emma that's right?" He said people like Emma deserve better. Kennedy paused, letting these stories hit home. He looked at Crockett's empty seat and said, "You talk about justice on TV, but what about Maria, James, Sarah, Miguel, and Emma? They're paying for Washington's waste." He said things like $1.5 million for Jamaica or $8 million for Cuba don't help. They just make life harder. He ended with a big call. People aren't Washington's money machine. They're hard-working folks. They deserve to know where their money goes. Crockett, don't expect thanks from Texas or Louisiana. Kennedy stood strong, showing the huge $36 trillion debt America has. He raised his hand, like he was drawing a giant number. That's bigger than most countries. It's crushing people like Maria or James. He said this debt came from bad choices in Obama and Biden's plans, which Crockett loves. He said the American Rescue Plan added $1.9 trillion to the debt. Crockett, you call that an investment? He asked. He called the Inflation Reduction Act a joke, adding $1 trillion without fixing prices. It's a bottomless pit, he said, pointing out how it hurts people like Sarah. The $4.7 trillion missing made him super mad. That's the biggest theft ever, he said like he was sharing a scary secret. It didn't just disappear, it was stolen or hidden. Crockett, investigate that, not Trump's plane. He said Crockett's defending a corrupt system. He also talked about politicians like Obama, Pelosi, and Biden, who got super rich while working for the government. How do you make $50 million on a $400,000 salary? He asked. Crockett, do you think people don't notice? He didn't say she was bad, but hinted she's protecting a broken system. He told a story about a Louisiana farmer who asked, "Why do I stay poor while Washington gets rich?" Kennedy looked around. That's what Crockett needs to answer. She investigates Trump, but what about the system hurting this farmer? He criticized the CHIPS Act, which gave $280 billion to big tech companies while Miguel's store struggles. Tech billionaires get billions, Crockett. You call that fair? He said it's a rigged game, and people are losing. Kennedy ended with a big promise. We need to check every agency. We can't let $36 trillion crush our kids' future, or let corruption destroy us. Crockett, if you care about Texas, help clean up Washington. Now Kennedy got playful, using his southern charm to poke at Crockett's TV style. He smirked, like he was ready for a fun fight. Crockett loves TV, calling Trump lost in his mess on Stephen Colbert's show. Kennedy tilted his head. She throws shade at Trump like it's a game, but why not aim at the messy spending she defends? He brought up how Crockett dared Trump to take an IQ test on Kimmel's show. Kennedy crossed his arms. She wants Trump to take a test? How about she takes a budget test first? Explain that $1.5 million for weird words in Sri Lanka. People laughed, but he stayed serious. Crockett's Trump or trans game blamed Trump for picking on transgender people. Kennedy fired back with his own game. Waste or fraud, $10 million for Al-Qaeda groups is both. He said, her games, just a trick to hide bigger problems. He mentioned the Atlanta airport story again, where Crockett cut in line. If she's in such a rush, maybe check that $4.7 trillion, he joked. He said her TV shine doesn't hide the truth. People are paying for her spotlight. He said Crockett acts like she's the only one who cares about justice. Justice isn't $8 million for Cuba's media. It's fixing roads and schools. He said his honest talks with voters beat her TV acts. I don't need cameras to tell the truth. Talk to a mom in Dallas, Crockett. He ended with a challenge. Drop the mic, Crockett, and face me in the Senate. The room buzzed like a storm was coming. Kennedy got serious again, like a coach rallying his team. He looked at Crockett's empty seat. If you believe in justice, step off TV and help. Us check every tax dollar. He said people don't want fancy speeches. They want their money used right, not on condoms in Ghana or media in Cuba. He dared Crockett to a debate. Explain that $1.5 million for Sri Lanka's journalists in front of everyone. Do you dare? He said her programs only help Washington, not regular people. He praised Elon Musk for checking government spending, calling him a truth hero. He wants Musk to check places like the Department of Education or even Fort Knox, joking, "Is the gold still there?" He said, "We need the truth. Every agency must be checked." He called out to all senators, This isn't about parties, it's about people paying taxes and raising kids. He urged them to support Trump in fixing spending, saying it's their job to be honest. Kennedy spoke to Americans like he was on TV himself. We're fighting for you. We want your money fixing roads and schools, not crazy projects abroad. Tell Crockett you want truth, not TV. Some senators clapped, others sat quietly, but Kennedy's words felt like a big push for change. This fight between Kennedy and Crockett shows a big split in America. How we use tax money and who's honest about it. Kennedy showed crazy spending, like $164 million for Hamas groups, $20 million for Sesame Street in Iraq, or $4.7 trillion gone missing, hurting folks like Maria, James, Sarah, Miguel, and Emma. Crockett defends big programs for justice, but Kennedy says she's out of touch. It's a battle between cutting waste to help people and spending big on global goals. Kennedy says Americans must demand answers from people like Crockett, using places like X or community meetings to ask questions and vote for leaders who care about local needs, like roads and schools. Learn from Maria and Miguel. Your voice matters. Don't let stuff like $1.5 million for weird words in Sri Lanka take over your town's needs. Demand answers to build a better, fairer America.